It was the 5th edition of this congress, and I definitively thought that it was a very interesting congress. There were about 300 attendees, and the speakers were really good speakers. Definitively, I appreciated most of them. To answer your question, definitely the two things that impressed me. The first one was about preclinical studies, and there were a young researcher from Belgium that Andy Woolert, that showed that when you are doing animal experiments and you use it as a model for the gut microbiota, you have to be cautious and you really standardize your experiments, because in some cases and in some very important publications, he was demonstrating that most of the effects were linked to the mother and cage effect and not to the change in the genotype of the mice. And he definitively demonstrated it very nicely. And as an example, it showed that the inflammasome, which is an important part of the immune response, didn't impact on the gut microbiota, although some years ago Rick Flavel published in Cell a very interesting paper showing a major difference in mice that were knocked out for NLRP6, and with his way to standardize the experiments, he demonstrated that there was no effect of this genotype. And actually that was even more interesting, that he asked another researcher from Switzerland to do the same experiments in her lab, and she had exactly the same absence of effect, actually. So that was the first thing. And the second thing that was really interesting was the fact that there are a lot of researchers are now interested not only in what happened in the gut, but what happened in other tissues, especially the brain or the bones or whatever. And I have to say that one of our colleagues, Frédéric Auré from the Wisconsin-Madison University, showed the importance of the gut microbiota in transforming choline, I mean that is well known, into TMA. And the fact that in pregnant animals, but you can think also for pregnant women, the fact that you have these bacteria that are transforming choline into TMA and then in TMAO in the liver, that results in the lack of choline for the mother and for the pups to develop. And actually it was linked to hypomethylation of DNA in the brain, and then to consequences for the behavior of the pups. And it's known in human actually that choline deficiency is linked to some brain troubles, including hyperactivity, for instance, for the children, and the problem of memory. So definitively that was also a very interesting conference, and definitively showing that the gut microbiota is important, but not only for the gut, but for other tissues, including the brain.